Hey guys, it's DT here from Bags. Welcome to the CashPod, your go-to guide to building a bigger, better cash flowing business. We appreciate you tuning in as we break down everything as it relates to growth, mastering your business finances, securing capital, scaling without burning yourself out. Today, we've got an incredible guest, Justin Bridges, marketing extraordinaire. He both understands what it means to build a business, be a tech founder, joined some incredible companies. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about all things relating to marketing, right? The key to marketing is all centered within your customer, your product, who you're building for, and then how to make sure that that holistic experience is unlocked through your business and your brand potentially. We're also going to be talking about all things AI. So let's dive in. Okay, so on today's episode, we've got my good friend, my cycling homie, previously Bags head of marketing, previous founder, current founder, marketing extraordinaire, Justin Bridges. What's going on, brother? How you doing?
Hey man, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun because I feel like you and I typically we have our marketing and or world and or startup conversations over a glass of wine. So this is a little bit of a different context. But I appreciate you for spending some time with us. Also appreciate you for everything that you've done for Bags and the community of businesses that continue to work with us. But I want to spend a little bit of time today talking a bit more about your journey as a founder and as a marketer, and then try to get into the nitty gritty things that most business owners should think about as it pertains to marketing and growth. But why don't we start on your journey? Because I actually think it's probably one of the more interesting non-straight line journeys of most founders that I've met. But I think actually the founder journey isn't a straight line. So maybe you're actually the majority. But Justin, yeah, tell us a little bit more about your story.
Absolutely. I mean, I hope that somebody can see themselves in both of our journeys. So nonetheless, I got my start. I moved to New York back in 2008 during the financial crisis. I came to New York to work for Goldman Sachs as an associate on a trading desk, like everybody else who gets started, either investment banking.
Hey, that was supposed to be my path. I was supposed to be literally on a trade desk as well.
100%. And I mean, look, the thing about it was I started during a really hard time. We were getting called names on TV. I honestly wanted to go that path because I wanted to find a way to change the wealth story for my family. But I quickly realized that it wasn't really the culture I wanted to be embedded in every day. I liked what I was doing. I liked some of the people I work with, but I just couldn't get myself up at 5:30 a.m. and hit the grind like that. And I wanted something that didn't feel so, I wanted something that felt a little bit more sticky. I wanted to put something into the world that stuck around, didn't just trading paper back and forth. So I had a really great conversation with my boss back then, who I didn't realize was coaching me out of my job, but in a good way. And we wrote down pros and cons on a napkin, what do you want to be doing? And I told, she knew at the time that I was picking up a camera, going out on the weekends and taking pictures. And she's like, pros and cons of following that versus doing this. And all the pros were basically I love what I'm doing. Every day would be different. I'd be finding my own path, blah, blah, blah. And on the con side, it just said, I'm worried about money. And the seed was planted. And from there on, I sort of tried to figure out a way to move through finance and try to get other jobs, but my heart wasn't in it anymore. And so I ended up doing a couple jobs before I got onto the marketing path. I worked for J. Crew, Saks Fifth Avenue. I worked for one of the most popular street photographers, the street style bloggers, the Sartorialist. Did that for a few years, and then ultimately how I met you years and years later after becoming a photographer for 10 years. I became a startup founder, and that journey made me an addict. I couldn't stop wanting to build things. I did that for about 2.5 years. We raised money with a similar investor, met each other at a retreat. And when it got hard again to raise money, as these last couple of years after the SVB bank collapse, I decided, you know what? One thing I'm missing is I want to be working with other founders that look like me, women, diverse founders, people that need some sort of marketing and sort of more general knowledge to build a business, but can't afford to hire 5 different people. They can hire one, and decided to launch a consulting business. And again, that's how you and me finally started working together for Bags. And, the rest has been history.
So I want to double click on the founder piece, right? as it pertains to, you guys were a small team, right? You'd had experience within advertising and marketing in different capacities, but like not on the business, like a small, founder startup level. How do you think that experience building enabled you to be a better marketer now that you're working with other business owners? Like, what was it about that like was the unlock outside of you being addicted to the hustle, which I think we all are in order to do this job? What was the unlock within that propelled you to really think holistically about marketing and all the things that go into it? Because I think marketing ends up being like an overarching word, and I think there's a lot more nuance in that.
No, that's a really good point. First of all, I think I'm a systems thinker. So even though El Camino, that was the company I was involved with, even though that was my first sort of founder's journey, technically building a photography business and scaling it to $1 million was my first founding business. And so, I think the thing that's unlocked when you're a founder is sort of if I don't know it, I got to go figure it out. I don't know how to outreach people cold. I got to go figure that out. I don't know how to generate invoices. I got to figure that out. I don't know how to keep my costs down. Maybe I should consider a studio. I got to go figure that out. Can I afford to do that? Do I need to find a client that's going to underwrite that? Like, just figuring it out. I think one of the earlier lessons I learned is, like, in business, everything's possible. Like, the reason I even opened a studio was because I sort of signed a forward contract with a client that said, we'll do our shoots with you for the year. And that gave me the confidence to like be able to take on an endeavor of a $6,000 a month studio, right? And so like everything is sort of just falling into stuff and then figuring it out. Same thing with El Camino. It's like I joined that company. There was probably 4 or 5 of us full time. And I joined as sort of this creative director type of role because honestly, I didn't feel comfortable taking a marketing title if I hadn't really professionalized or been professionalized in it. And so honestly, what happened was I got into the mud. I realized that we were leveraging my contacts for fundraising. I realized that like we actually needed more help on the client services side. We needed help and so it's just sort of one of those things where you're like, in order to actually make impact here, I'm gonna have to figure out like 5 different departments and you just go get it done. A lot of YouTube videos, a lot of joining up for other people's classes. And I essentially taught myself marketing, but I've always said the biggest lesson, and one of the reasons I joined the company in the first place was at the end of this experience, I will have gotten an MBA and basically the company would have paid for it. And that's sort of how I look at everything. One giant internship.
I think that is so real. And it's funny. I went to Columbia Business School and spoke to a bunch of MBAs, and as I was sitting there, I was like, yeah, like, all right, like there is an experience that can be valuable for some people, right? Or you can just build a business with the $100,000 it would cost you, right, to go do your MBA. It's like, and give it a shot, and you are forced to learn. Okay, so underpinning that is this: you had to learn on the fly. Now you've transitioned into how to help others, right, on their journey towards using and leveraging marketing, brand, paid, organic, all of these things. Where do you suggest when you typically, especially with some of the call it more green businesses that you meet or work with, like where do you suggest founders start, right, when they're thinking about all things marketing? Where do you typically like to start with people?
Man, I don't want to get in trouble for defining marketing wrong, but I will start with this. I will start with this process of where to start. This is going to be an unpopular opinion, but I start with the product.
Hey,
It's not unpopular, but like if you don't have a product worth talking to people about, it's really going to be a difficult uphill battle to figure out what to say. And I think that's a lot of people's problem is that they sort of go to the marketing side. Sales is like the big banner. Like if I don't get sales, I can't keep a roof over my head. If I don't get sales, blah, blah, blah. But like undergirding all that is, did I build something that people will want, people will demand, and that I'm uniquely gifted to be able to provide to other people? And so always product. Now let's scrape that away and just get into the marketing.
No, but hold on. I actually, no. I think you're spot on because like good products solve a problem for people, right? Which identifies your customer. So if you don't know your customer, who the hell are you going to market to, and how are you crafting around? So I actually completely agree. It starts with the product.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the first part of, I think, marketing that comes out of this thought process is the same it's the same thing you would do if you were, leading a product-led growth process. You would talk to customers. And that's like the first thing I do with almost any brand that I work with. And now in my current role, the first thing I do is ask, can I get like 10 people that have already used the product, 10 people that you think would use the product? And I go through, there's a really great book called The Mom Test. I forget the author's name, but that's one of the books I read in order to figure out how to ask questions of potential customers and customers alike without influencing their responses. And I try my best to sort of figure out, one, who are these people? Is this a headache or a migraine problem? Because, like, to be honest, if you're only solving a headache problem, it's going to be hard work too. And then try to figure out, like, we talk about this all the time, but I love Donald Miller's story brand technique, which is like, within that technique, it's understanding, like, are we like tacking into a like superficial external problem? Are we hitting these internal problems? Or are we hitting the philosophical stuff? And I think typically if you're only talking to somebody about the external problem, you're missing a real opportunity to serve, and you're really not tapping into the thing that makes them pull out their credit card immediately and go, I gotta have this. And so everything for me starts with the customer and really understanding those 3 layers of needs. And then we can talk about, like, what do we want to do on the marketing side?
Yeah.
We're going to be lost in the weeds.
And do you find most people end up with thinking about too many customers or too few? Like what's the
great question.
We talk about this shit all the time, right? Like I'm like, I want to sell to this and this and this and this, and you're like, nah. Like what usually happens?
Yeah, that's a really great question too. I think it depends, but underlying almost every founder journey has always been, especially founder journeys that are backed by some sort of venture capital. But let's just even take somebody who's decided to quit their job, put what little savings they have towards an idea. Oftentimes you sort of like cast a really wide net, and that is a scarcity thing, and I totally understand it. I did that in photography. I would have to hit up 100 people to get like 2 sales. And sometimes you feel like that's the only thing you can do. But I would answer your question by saying too many people. I think the number one thing you want to do is truly identify who this problem is the worst for, because then you find who this product is perfect for. It's really scared to follow that sort of trope, or not trope, but like the meme, like the riches is in the niches.
Yeah.
It is true. If you can solve the problem for, who else does this? There's a book by Marcus Collins, I believe is his name. He's a black marketer, worked at Wyden Kennedy, done some big ad jobs for some of the biggest brands, Nike, et cetera. But what he talks about is we traditionally look at a funnel, and the funnel is like wide and it goes down narrow. So you have to bring in a lot of people, 1,000, to get to those 20 people that buy the thing. But like what he proposes, and I have been a proponent for the last 5 years, is like, actually, how can we look at our grouping as a congregation? A congregation is going to be much smaller. But the idea is that we can get a congregation of people that love what we do, then they'll go out and spread the gospel, which is a completely different way to think about it. I'll leave you with this example, and I'm not a church-going person. Don't have to bring religion into this, but
you go drive.
But the example is religious in the context of church. And one of the examples he gives, not my example, I haven't thought of an alternative, but one of the examples he gives is like, people don't show up at churches because you put out flyers, right? They come to the church that you're going to because a friend goes to them and says, hey, come to me to church this Sunday. And like, to me, that is quintessentially what happens when the riches are in the niches. I use bags as for example, and it solves all my financial management problems for my small business. Any of my friends that are freelancers or entrepreneurs, I'm telling them, because we're going to talk about it over dinner, over wine, or one more cycling, and it's going to be like, dude, I can't figure this shit out. Right. And so like, I'll be like, hey, you know what I'm using? I'm on Mastermind and like Founder Slacks. I'm sure you are too. And all day it's people going, hey, looking for somebody to do dev using Squarespace or Shopify. Hey, do you know somebody that does that? That's how a lot of business gets done. And that's where the flywheel starts, is people loving a product and then passing it down. It's telephone.
And what's cool about that is that's compounding LTV, right? Like now your one customer is turning into two, two is turning into three. And I also think it's a very good pressure test of like, is your product good enough?
Yeah.
Right? If your product's good, people tell other people about it. Like it's kind of that simple.
Yeah.
But to your point is that if you didn't go deep enough, right? If you didn't really touch on that one thing for that one person that has that acute pain point, right? And listen, Will always likes to say, you know, you can build a multi-million-dollar brand just selling between 14th Street and 42nd Street. Like that, like there are a lot of people in a lot of places that if you are solving something specific and unique to them and it speaks to them, like you'd rather speak to somebody than speak to nobody. But I love the way that church example is. Damn, that's real.
It hits, right? It
It
hits.
hits. No, it completely hits because it speaks to the virality. It speaks to two things. It speaks to the virality of of the referral element, but it also speaks to the like reality of like the core behind why someone does something.
Yeah.
Right? It's not because of the flyer. It's because of that belief that right.
We're joining the community. I mean, this is why, like, one of the arguments I made 3 years ago was like the shift to actually community-based marketing models is so important to pay attention to. Like, we're making decisions.
Define that. Hold on. Define that for the listeners. Yeah.
I guess the way that I see it, maybe it won't look like this on the internet, but like the way I see it is like we have decided that communities are sort of what our digital footprint is. And I'm saying, no, it's not. Your community is much more akin to the people in your universe that will actually feel connected, can actually log into, whether that's double clicking into a running club where people they're aligned with. I mean, again, it's like almost circling back to tribe, but like most brands don't actually build tribes. They just build followerships. And I'm saying community 2.0 is like, or 3.0, wherever we're at, is like, how do you actually create a community that's activated? Meaning, you know, are you on, this was, you know, the crypto world, are you on discourse with your people? Are you showing up in the real world with your people? Or are you just creating an email list so you can send more stuff for them to sell? Like, I think there's different things between those. And finding that for your brand and what your product is really difficult. But paying attention to it gives you a lot more latitude to like mess up and try again than if you're just hawking stuff and not really connecting as a two-way conversation. And really, I guess that's what is the foundation. Are you creating a community with a two-way foundation or two-way communication, or are you just sending stuff out to have people buy it? Like, that's the way I think about it. You know, like if I was going to pivot this into another sort of adjacent additive tip for small businesses, I find that a lot of people spend so much money on branding and so much time on branding. And I'm like, but why? Right? Like you haven't.
Okay. So we need to double click into that because like, you know, and for those who are listening, very likely they've probably heard quotes from branding people for 25 grand, for 100 grand,
Yeah.
200 grand, for 10, maybe for 5, right? So like, and those are obviously the monetary components. But I speak to so many people who are like, no, I can't sell this product until I do this big rebrand.
Yeah.
So are you saying that the rebrand, if you were to take your capital resources, let's say it's a bucket of $100,000, you're not going saying here's 100 and we're going to go put it into the brand? Like, why is branding the thing that people are over indexing on, if that's what you're implying? And where should they, right, be reallocating that focus if it isn't for brand?
That's a solid question. Look, I want to universalize this a little bit because I think my answer slightly changes. Like if we have a sliding scale, I would say that, look, if you have to put a product on a shelf in a grocery store, like CPG brand, then your brand is going to matter because it's about context. Who am I sitting next to? If you're launching a tech product, or you have a construction business, or you're an architecture firm, like all these things depend on how sort of like how much vanity is in the business space, right? And so like that's my first note. The second note in terms of a mindset shift is that I think that we're over-indexing towards brand because we've also built this belief that every channel has this vanity element and it matters. But like the biggest thing that threw a sort of wrench or a bomb into the cipher was like, this is one of those places where if you don't show up messy, I'm gonna think something's up, right? And so we have these worlds where it's really aesthetic driven, it's like lifestyle driven, but we're also in a new era where people are pushing back and they don't want things to be perfect. So I think what I'm trying to communicate is you have latitude, you have room.
Yeah.
And so if you have, look, most people don't have 100 grand, but if you even have $5,000 and you're trying to figure out, how to spend your money, I would say 20% is on like sort of just a logo, like just making sure you have some appearance in the world that feels right and aligned with how you feel about yourself. But remember, people decide what your brand means, and then you just make sure you don't mess it up. And I would spend the 80% on making sure that product is killer. Because like again, there's a lot that can be forgiven if you're showing up and serving the customer in a way that the switching costs are high, or the defensibility is high, or I don't have this solution anywhere else. Honestly, I would rather make money and then spend the money on the brand than to make the brand thinking that that's going to be a solution for not having a great product. And that's what I think is a big problem.
I mean, listen, that you are preaching the bag script, which is like do things that drive more revenue and cash flow to your business, right, and for your business. And I think that's obviously once you have the product and it's in market. But I think from an early days perspective, at least for me, it's always like make it real as fast as possible, right? You can go spend a lot of time workshopping the brand and workshopping this and workshopping that. But to your point around the product, like, did you sell something to someone? Did they come back and buy it again?
Yeah.
Or keep the subscription or tell somebody about it?
But there's a lot of founders out here that have ideas and they want to connect those ideas to development, but at the same time they don't have money and they can't raise money necessarily. And so anyway, Lovable enters into the space. They've created the ability for non-technical founders, non-technical people to spin up a product idea. And actually where it's different from other software is that I hope I'm not putting anybody out of business, but where it's different.
So it's a take on like a no code platform.
Exactly. Yeah. Except where it's different is it enters a space where a lot of the no code solutions, when they hit errors, you have to have some sort of technical background to be able to fix it. And this one just gets it done. I haven't tested it yet, but it's a thing I want to test. And the reason I bring this up is they went from like a 4 million ARR within like 6 months or something like that to over 10 million. And now they're not even telling you anymore. And their team is under 20, right? And so the reason I bring that up is like when you build something undeniable, if you go to the website, I'm sure you just pulled it up, it doesn't look amazing. It's just sort of a platform with a basic UI that allows you to get excited. And like, that's what I'm saying. And this appeals, the barrier to entry to create a brand that feels really good to people isn't high. It just looked high in the millennial era of like Warby Parkers and Aways and stuff like that. But like if you extrapolate from that or pull away from that, there are so many businesses that are spun up in like construction, GCs, whatever, where all they had to do was get one good logo and then sort of have a better approach to serving the client, that they're stealing businesses from the traditional route. So like there's opportunities everywhere and you don't have to like reinvent the wheel. It's just, how can you provide better service or a better product and show up in that way and save your money?
Hey, 100%. I mean, I think we're not going to dive too deep into the millennial brand because I think there's a whole thing to unpack there. I love that you brought up, the authenticity, the less brand nature for platforms like TikTok. I do think that part of that narrative is like the genuine human storytelling of how people are approaching marketing these days, like bringing people along for the journey. That it doesn't mean you have the best brand, but it means that people are continuing to buy into not just the product, but also you with a good product. Like those things are moving the needle. But as we get into sort of the latter pieces of this conversation, a couple of things that are like top of mind for me, even as I think about marketing right now, are like AI. Right? Like that's obviously a big topic that people are thinking about, and they're, going into, one of the various AI search engines or platforms and writing in like, put together a brand pitch, put together this, one, what's your broader perspective on using the tooling that exists right now to scale your ability to, go ahead. scale your ability to execute, your pace to execute, and or your quality execute, right?
Mm-hmm.
So are we pro that? And then two, what are the tools that you love, right? Not that, you know, we not endorsing anybody for free. Like hopefully they all write us a check. But like, you know, given you are literally in this from a day-to-day perspective, what are the things that you're using to provide additional value to the businesses that you work with, to yourself as you're running your own business and acquiring customers? Are there things that you have found really move the needle?
Yeah, I mean, I to the first part of the question, how do I feel about scaling productivity? I have a one take that's related to I want to be within a world in which, especially here in the US, there are some level of guardrails to protect people that are being optimized out of roles, to have some protection to move into new roles or be retrained or whatever, because I think AI is one of those sort of once in an era types of innovations that is going to hurt a lot of people, just like automating cars puts truck drivers out of business. I think that same thing is true about a lot of like knowledge workers too. And so I wish we were within a better framework in order to navigate this stuff. Now, to the tactical response, I use ChatGPT every day. I know some people like Claude, but I train my custom GPTs, and I think the way that you can interface and generate more content, generate all these things, I'm totally fine with. And I think it creates good work product if you train it on enough writing. So yes, I'm a big fan of scaling up productivity. Look, at the end of the day, you know this, I just joined a firm on the executive search and talent side, and I'm the only person in marketing and sales, right? Like outside of the founder helping with sales, right? And so the reality is we can't afford to go out and hire like 5 of me. So I need to sort of figure out ways, both by focusing, but also by using tools like these to scale up what I'm doing so that I can get work out the door, right? Build it and ship it. And so I'm a big fan of using AI for things like that. I'm a big fan of using AI for thought partnership. You know, even reading the books that I've read, it's nice to feed those books in and say and build like sort of a co-founder that I can talk to and say, hey, look, I've been thinking about this referral strategy, but I don't have the full breadth of like other businesses running referral strategies.
Of course.
Let's talk back and forth about this and make sure I'm doing the one that, one, is best situated for the business I'm in, two, that I'm thinking about the gaps that maybe I haven't had experience in, et cetera, et cetera. So I think scaling up productivity, thought partnership, optimizing things, risk analysis, you know, being a smarter version of yourself doesn't hurt. I think it can only help. And you have to be able to like spot check your work and all those kind of things. But yeah, I'm a big fan, and I use it daily.
Okay, so there's so many incredible nuggets in there. One that I actually want you to repeat. How are you using AI and books to create someone to talk to, right? To provide more perspective? Like, what is the step-by-step action that a founder? No, I'm serious. To be honest, I haven't even thought about that. I'm like, I'm about to go pull my books off the shelf and we're going to get in there.
Yeah.
But like, love that approach. So like, break that approach down. And then like, what exactly does a business need to do in order to actually like do that for themselves? Yeah. And how can it be used?
100%. I think what I did was I built like a sort of knowledge base based on the custom GPT that I wanted to build. And so like, let's say you're trying to build your custom GPT co-founder, partner in chief. What I do is I went and found like both books I haven't read and books that I have read because I knew the authors or whatever. I also went to like blogs of people that I follow or, you know, that are very popular in sort of the startup realm. I mean, like the easiest one that's just quote out loud is like a Paul Graham, Y Combinator originator. But other people in the space, Scott Galloway. I mean, like there's just so many thinkers in this space. Also, I want to emphasize inputting a diverse group of people too, not just all the sort of popular white men of a generation. Thinking about women that have made impact, people of color that have made impact, because you're going to get a diverse and more richer experience. Basically, find all those documents, whether you had to copy and paste the best blog entries or the best parts of or chapters out of a book, where you can find full books to download. Do that. Sorry, there's a fire, and it's New York, obviously. But gather all those resources. If you don't know how to feed that into a custom GPT, just ask it. You know, how do I build a custom GP that I want to do this with? And it'll just list out the steps and then follow those steps. Ingest them in the back end. I won't go through the tactical steps, but ingest all that in the back end. Give it some guidelines for how you want its tone, how you want it to interact. A lot of my GPTs, I asked to sort of work with me on a Socratic method so that we're like when we're doing thought partnership work, we're actually going back and forth with the conversation before I have them output like the McKinsey style information,
Of
just to make
course.
sure that we're thinking about like the right things together before I get all this dump. I also sometimes mix the types of personalities and how it talks to me. So it's also entertaining to me and it's fun and I feel connected to it. But like as a baseline, just find the right sources, inputs that you want to input. If you have, now here's where it gets really awesome is if you have a knowledge base based on the business you've already built. You've been with Bags for years. You guys have customer input. I mean, obviously you can redact some information
Of
of your
course.
privacy, but you have so much knowledge that you've already built for the business you're in. Input that too. Like I wouldn't be lying. Not when we do work together. Like I'll take the KPI tracker, remove every piece of company thing, and just look at the trends and input the Excel spreadsheet with everything removed. It limits some of the things I can pull out because I protect businesses at all
Of
points.
course.
But I look at it to sort of help me analyze some of those trends and see what I'm not seeing. And then I take what it's saying and I take my institutional knowledge and I'm like, here's what I want to try to say to get my point across. Let's make sure we're mapping it to real data so that they can get something out of it. But I do that kind of work with all my clients. So take institutional knowledge outside in the external world, marry it together, upload it one dot as much as it can ingest at a time, train it to talk to you the way you want or the way that your mind works, and then test out different iterations of trying to work with it. That's it. It's the most simple, basic thing ever.
I love it. I just learned something. So I'm about to be all up in there doing the exact same thing this evening.
I will add one thing. I think that, so I've been a photographer for years, more than a decade. And before I started teaching classes on Skillshare, for instance, I didn't feel comfortable until I felt like I was the expert at a thing. And so it's not to say don't just dump a bunch of stuff into GPT and then try to learn from it, because I think there's something supportive there. But I encourage people to build up their own internal knowledge base of experience before they just go trusting GPT. Like if I hadn't ran a referral program, or I wouldn't know even what to trust from what GPT was giving back to me. So I always encourage founders, you don't have to go 10 encyclopedias deep, but I do encourage people to get a base level of understanding where they're doing some source reading themselves, some YouTube listening, get some real general knowledge in each topic that you're going to actually get help from the custom GPT, so you can spot things that are wrong, spot things that are leading you down the wrong path, spot ways that you can challenge its own assumptions and think about things better for your business. Don't just ingest stuff and then go, I trust you, GPT, like we got this. You know what I mean? I think it's also just going to make you a better leader in general if you know to talk your own book without having to every single time go to GPT to ask for help before you go speak it to the gospel.
It's a quality of inputs, quality of outputs, right? And you're
Exactly.
only so good as your inputs if you don't right? If you can't really understand them, the inputs can only be so good. So I agree. Doing the work beforehand, especially given all the knowledge that is out there, YouTube, like dig a mile deep, gain your base, have a perspective, and then use that in order to really feed something that could be truly valuable for you. Justin, before we go, first of all, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find you? Given you're the first guest that we've had on, it's important that we throw the shout out. Where can people connect with Justin?
Easy.
Justin Bridges.
Like I'm easy. If you're the type that wants to connect on social media on Instagram, you can find me at Freelance Kills, even though I'm less freelance than ever. You can also find the company that I'm working for. I want to give us a plug. It's
Yes.
O4.co, OFFOR.co. This won't help businesses that are sort of below a certain threshold, but if you are generating revenues of 10 million plus and you are looking to hire real operators and leadership, we can help you find that and actually access a wide, diverse pool of talent that is ready to help your business grow. And also, you can find me, Justin, at Justin Bridges. Shoot me an email. I still advise companies. I still advise founders. I'm happy to help plug in and connect with you as a founder or direct you to resources I think are valuable to help your journey, even if I can't do it for you. So please connect with me in any of those ways.
Just to be clear, having someone who helps with talent, who understands what it means to be a business owner, is game changing. Period. End of story. So Justin, thank you so much for joining us. Everyone, thank you so much for listening to the Cash Pod, where we talk about all things money, business growth, and today was all about marketing, product, the importance of your customer. We threw some AI stuff in there at the end. But Justin, thank you so much for joining us. And everyone, look forward to seeing you next time.
Absolutely. Can't wait to come back.